Jenna Coleman is taking the lead in the Jetty. The BBC-produced series follows Ember Manning, Coleman, a detective tasked with investigating a holiday home fire that quickly finds itself tangled in an old missing persons case. Rounding out the Jetty's ensemble are notable names such as Tom Glencarny, Dunkirk, Archie Renault, Shadow and Bone, Ruby Stokes, Bridgerton, and Ralph Ineson, the Fantastic Four, First Steps. The Jetty represents the latest installment in Coleman's extensive television catalogue. She got her start on screen on the storied British soap opera Emmerdale, which saw her portray Jasmine Thomas for 180 episodes in the late 2000s. Over the 2010s, Coleman found success on programs such as Doctor Who, Victoria, and The Sandman. In celebration of the Jetty's arrival on Hulu and BritBox, Screen Rant spoke with Coleman to discuss the show's tonal influences, what attracted her to the role of Ember Manning, her reaction to the series shooting two different endings, what's next for her on The Sandman, and whether a Marvel Cinematic Universe return could be in her future. The Jetty takes inspiration from two popular thriller shows. Coleman cited Mayor of Easttown and Sharp Objects as tonal influences. Jenna Coleman: I feel like the tone, I hate to say Mayor of Easttown because obviously there's some very clear nods there, just mainly because it's a lot to do with generational female relationships, but also the case where a detective is chasing her own by stepping forward. And actually Sharp Objects, that's kind of a reference that we spoke about a lot. This is what I found most interesting about the script is by Ember stepping forward headfirst into a case she is unknowingly unraveling her own past. So you've got this amazing kind of push-pull tension of it being a personal case rather than a detective taking on a case that is she's not looking elsewhere but instead she's looking into her own past. And in a way, again, thematically, it brings up so much about mirrors and memory and unresolved trauma, how the mind can suppress various things in people's lives for them to surface later. It felt very murky. It was a lot about blurred boundaries and sexual politics. Rather than it being a pure kind of detective case, it felt like it sits a lot more in a character-driven piece. Ember Manning is a mother and a rookie detective. She's come to it later in life. She has a very dysfunctional relationship with her mother, who's very bohemian and relaxed and loud. And in a way I think Ember's kind of grown up being the more responsible, almost being the parent to her mother. So that sets us off in a really interesting dynamic. And then she had her daughter very young, so her relationship with her daughter is almost sly and they could be friends. So you have these really interesting dynamic between the three women. She's kind of been stunted in her growth. So rather than in her 20s following the career that she wanted, it's like she's arriving at this point now later on in life in her 30s. This show is kind of her awakening, so to speak. Jenna Coleman: yeah, and actually, I came to this project really early, so I was sent an initial script at the beginning and then the plot changed. They can, and as they do, so it was being honed all along and shifted in quite dramatic ways, actually. But I would say in terms of Ember, knowing who she was as a person, as a character, it's one of the things that really drew me to this project because my fear sometimes of playing a detective is that they never feel like a fully fleshed human. To me, Ember felt like that immediately off the page. She's quite sad, her humor is very dry, and she's quite prickly. She's a bit of a dog with a bone as well. So she's quite stubborn. Pride is maybe her biggest flaw. So it feels, in many ways, that her flaws are also the thing that makes her a really good cop. At the same time, it's like both of them fight with one another, but she's not necessarily, that kind of sticks to a rule book. Jenna Coleman: it was in the edit, and to be honest, I love doing that as well. I think especially with a piece, especially again, a thriller and a detective piece, it's like fine-tuning it in an edit. I think always having those options and the options that actually in our takes were very subtle, but it changed. It's really hard to say without saying the plot, but it changes the kind of outcome quite significantly.